Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're just going to give it a few minutes here for some people to hop into the Twitter space here. So we'll be having Robert join here shortly. He said about 7:05 p.m., so just a few minutes here. So just bear with us. We'll be getting started shortly. Again, just want to make sure Robert's here and we got more listeners as well. All right, guys, back here again. Welcome, everybody. Happy Sunday to everybody out there in the Twitter space. Uh, Officially, my very first Twitter space that I've ever done. So, really excited to have Robert here coming here shortly so that we can, kind of pick his brain and go into detail about the Genius project. Really excited to hear more of what he has to say and just explain it to those of you out there that might be confused about some things. So really excited about that. As you guys know, I've moved in a different direction. If some of you guys came from my YouTube channel, had about 28,000 subs. Uh, Deleted that channel, wanted to go in a different direction. I've been talking about it for a while as far as doing podcasts and things like that, but I really enjoy Twitter and in kind of the engagement, the instant engagement you get with your followers and just the algorithm altogether. So um, I think somebody said you can't hear. Let me go ahead and see if I can fix that. So sorry about that. I guess you guys can't hear me. Um, so yeah, as I was saying, I decided to be a little bit more active on Twitter now, and I'm just having a lot of fun with it. Like I said, the engagement here is really, and the algorithm is just really something where it's very trendy, and I love to, you know, talk with you guys, have these type of spaces in the future, with projects that I really truly feel have a bright future. Nothing along the lines of pump and dump. So I'm looking for projects such as Genius, where you got faces like Robert Genito and people in the space that know what they're doing when it comes to blockchain. So that's really important. So again, thanks for joining me on a Sunday. If the Cowboys had won last weekend, I wouldn't be doing this interview right now, I'd probably be celebrating. Hopefully, if they would have made it, would have been celebrating. Even till today, they probably would have either won or lost by now. But thanks for joining. And again, Robert should be here shortly. If you guys aren't familiar with Robert Genito, he is basically the heart and soul founder of Genius Project. And there's a lot of things that I'm going to be asking him today, and I'll be opening the floor at some point. I don't know if some of you guys are at R2R. We'll probably be taking questions from my private group. So if any of you guys are interested in that, you can reach out to me, direct message me on Twitter, or reply to. I think it's hard for people to reach out to me on Twitter right now. I think for some reason I have it blocked, but you can reply to one of my tweets, ask to get in, and it's just a VIP group I've had for the past year. So a lot of bright minds are in there. A lot of people with different ideas and different backgrounds that I really think I'm a true believer when it comes to 100 heads are better than one. A lot of the things that I've found out there in the space, including Genius, came from somebody in the chat, and I collaborate with a lot of people, and I listen to what they say. I do my own research, and if it's something that I think is worth my time and efforts and my investment, I'll definitely jump in. So Genius was one of them, and there's many out there that I've been successful with. So I don't take all the credit. I know there's people that are like, "Oh man, you've done a lot of good plays." I've had bad plays as well, but the ones that are good usually came from somebody from R2R, somebody that I've connected with. So um, let me just I'm gonna go on mute for a second here. I'm gonna make sure Robert's here to join. Let me go on my desktop computer here and see if he's going to be joining here shortly. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them. People from R2R, I'll be looking at those questions, throughout the interview, and hopefully we can get some closure on any of the confusion that's out there, because Genius is very, very complex. However, it's very new, so that has a lot to do with it. And again, if any of you guys are joining, I'm just trying to reach out to Robert. I know he was just trying to get to a safe spot, where he had a little to no noise. So hopefully he'll be here any minute, and we can get the show on the road. Hey, hey, how's it going, Robert? I see that you joined the chat. Just requesting for you to be a speaker now. Um, Holler back when you hear this. Just want to make sure I hear somebody else. Make sure my volume's good as well. if you want to do a mic check, Robert, just to make sure everything's good.
All right, there we go. Hey, Thomas. Looks like there are many, many, many technical difficulties here, but I have a mic button now. Can you all also hear me?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, brother. I appreciate you taking the time today to join us on the Twitter space. I was letting everybody know how thankful I am for everybody joining today on a Sunday, especially on a football Sunday. You know, a lot of NFL fans out there. So thanks everybody for being here, and definitely want to dig into this so that we can get any confusion out there, because I know it literally may take a genius to understand genius, but I think after much breakdowns, and especially hearing it from you, people have a better understanding. So thank you for joining so we can clear some things up.
Thank you so much for having me speak here. I really appreciate it. And on your comments on, take a genius to figure genius out, I've realized even the people who've done the tokenomics for this, like all together, have done the tokenomics, and these ideas we had for it, we all worked, together a lot, looked at a lot of our spreadsheets before the coding happened and before we diagrammed things and etc. And, we were all it was very new to us, even though each little idea we had here and there kept building on top of the other on ideas of incentivizing end user actions and ideas on very basics of supply and demand. And inevitably, we were all very humbled, and to be frank, it took us many months even to understand each other's work. So you might say, "Hey, it takes a genius to understand it." Well, yeah, maybe, but when the user uses it and they see it happen, they really don't need to understand it like a genius, right? They use it, they see it works. Language gets better and better. So what we really need here is good language, right? So thank you for doing this with me. I think this will help us figure out how to use better words and better communicate this.
Absolutely. And also just the state of DeFi just out there in general, just with all the scams and rug pulls and the things of that nature that are happening today. I think it's important for people to not only see a face. I know you show your face, you have your own YouTube channel, but they also hear from you yourself. And that's going to be, the first thing I want to get into is, you know, quickly, Robert, just tell them, introduce yourself, tell them who you are, but also tell the community of people here, what is your crypto credentials? What have you done in blockchain, so that people know that you're definitely a force in the space from what I've researched, and we all want to hear it from you, your experience and what you brought into the table in crypto and how long you've been around.
Thank you. My name is Robert Genito. Uh, my background before crypto, FYI, was a majority of my life doing software, and then later, software as a software architect. Really, I think that's where I spent most of my life. Um, Let me think. Yeah, over 2/3 of my life has been in software. I started early. I was like the 13-year-old that knew how to make websites. So therefore, anybody who was looking for people to build websites, and especially with like JavaScript, like blew up. So I had very much tech background, and I was using Linux since a very, very young age. So Linux gives you an idea of how to get a bunch of machines to work together and how to automate things, right? And it was a little, it was like almost, it was more than 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago. I found out about Bitcoin and didn't get it at first, but once I started mining, all came together. So I'm an early miner. I started mining in early 2011. That's when I like really jumped in. From there, I got into, I had a business mindset. I wanted to help others with mining, got into mining co-location. Um, then later came more of a problem with cold storage for exchanges. So I had started a software company and the software company solved problems mainly in the blockchain space. Actually, entirely in the blockchain space, except for the beginning. So we did things like cold storage for exchanges that could be rapidly deployed. And after there, I ended up focusing a lot on adoption, cryptocurrency adoption. Long ago, the whole mindset was, this is so powerful. Crypto is so powerful. And decentralized finance is so powerful that if we don't get it out there, like this could be snuffed out. This little tiny flame could get snuffed out. So then I began focusing greatly on adoption. Many exchanges were out. People were solving those problems. People were solving problems with mining, etc. And then with adoption, I ended up working with many different cryptocurrencies and focusing on them taking the first steps to to work, to do good. So you had all these cryptocurrencies that were marketing themselves, but then their users couldn't really get on or use it. They couldn't figure out how to get the coin. They couldn't figure out any of this stuff. So along a lot of that, a few of the really big notable successes were with Dash cryptocurrency. My team worked with the Dash core group and a marketing firm, and we got Dash up to number 3 in the charts for their coin market cap. And from there, it also worked with Pivx, which turned out to be a salty competitor, and others, allowing these ecosystems to be the very first, to buy Dash, for example, through wallet or through the wallet, or to buy Pivx through the wallet directly. It was an entrepreneur, was a pioneer in that area. So here, when it came to Genius, it was 6 years ago, I started thinking more about the problem of the store of value, what everybody wanted in the first place, or people like myself, to solve that problem. That's a bit of my background.
It's a small world because when I first got into YouTube, people had said that I gave Dash a black eye because I was really promoting one of their forward competitors, Pivx. I think you might have mentioned them. I was going, this is the
Yes.
Dash killer. And
yeah. Do you
remember
when Pivx's wallet had a way to buy through the wallet?
No, I remember that was my very first staking experience. I remember laying in bed with the laptop connected to the wall next to me and seeing my first stake come through. And I was like super excited. And after that, I never looked back. I think I got into everything that was involved with staking, but I'm close with Fuzzballs, one of the developers from there, for a long time now. And smart guy. I don't know whatever happened with Pivx. It kind of moved on from that, but I do remember that time. I was like, Dash is the devil. It's all about Pivx, but Dash was always a great product. I always knew it was, but
I mean, yeah, Pivx. Ultimately, Pivx, Steam, and many others. It was ultimately their community that killed them. And you see where you have really toxic communities, which sucks when you see a community you love when it starts getting really toxic. I've seen this happen tons of times. It is so important at that time for the leaders to stand up, for like less toxic ideologies, because a really good idea and a really kind idea many times can have a really bad interpretation. You could, for example, now in the DeFi world, you could have the idea of like, look, there's a lot of scams out there, and well, I'm trying to come up with an example as a hypothetical. There's an ideology such as like, hey, there's a lot of scams and there's a lot of scam coins coming out. We got to watch out for these scam coins. That can turn into the ideology, which always turns into maximalism, where everybody else and every other innovation is a scam. But these communities, yeah, ultimately, I've seen where if leadership, doesn't step out to put more like positivities there, embracing innovation, embracing change, and bringing people together, I've seen that they ultimately keep themselves, more isolated, like Pivx and like Steam, and they really kill their momentum.
I've seen it 100 times, probably a month at this rate. To be honest with you, it happens a lot. But the next thing I do want to jump into is just kind of the birth of genius, because from my understanding, I want you to confirm this as well and kind of just break down what you can or talk about it. As far as the developers with Genius, I heard there's about 10 different developers, and that you have, I don't know if it's two or three or just two devs that were part of Hex. Is that true, or do you want to elaborate on that and kind of explain, you know, how many developers you have and if that story is true? Because it's just rumored to me. I've never confirmed or asked you.
Okay, yeah, sure. That's a good question. I have 0 developers right now. There's no developers right now. I mean, you know how it is with the whole finished product kind of a thing. Uh, Prior to that, the birth of Genius, it really came from inspiration from both Dash and Steam, where, because you remember with Steam, if you used it, but that was around the Pivx times. With Steam, it was like a medium.com, so it was like a blogging site, and or that was its first showcase of how to use the blockchain. And their rewards were based on people's attention, where people would they would see a cool blog, so they would upvote it, right? And these whales and these people, as they had more rewards and as they had more steam, their upvote could hold a lot of weight, to where the individual was getting paid a lot more from whales who are giving them their attention. And there are a lot of other things with Dash that had done that too, but the birth of Genius really started with me writing these articles on the future of money. If you go to the web domain or the URL, type it in geni.to, geni.to/money. I believe that's the link. It goes to an old Steam site. And so from here, with these different ideas of the future of money, and as well with myself being just in so many different, Discord back then, different Discord groups, different Slack groups. I wasn't using IRC anymore after that, sharing a lot of these ideas. And, ultimately the people that ended up talking with me the most about it, and me talking with them the most about it, and us working together, involved an individual who has their PhD in mathematics and such, and they're an engineer, and with like thermodynamics and all sorts of crazy stuff. They're an engineer, and the other two individuals, they're very inspirational as far as their input on tokenomics for Hex. And those two individuals specifically, they've asked me since the very beginning, since it was turning into a token, to not mention them, not bring them in. I believe one of them was in the early Genius chat room. They left it. They didn't want to be seen as any part of that, right? So they don't want to be doxxed. And when implementation came forward, where you have to turn this into a real idea, right? You have to get people to, you have to take the idea, the white papers, the formulas, the math, the formulas. When you take this idea, then you gotta translate it to something like Solidity, which uh, which has limitations, right? Like, I mean, math has limitations too, but it has limitations. And so from there, um, you see the team, the landscape right now with smart contract developers is insanely, I can't say cutthroat anymore, but it's riddled with scammers, and it's also riddled with people who you can't get their attention because they already have an extremely well-paying arrangement, right? So, so at first, it was very much a shotgun approach of finding contract developers, and excuse me, and although I know Solidity and etc., um, this really isn't a position that I could be the only programmer. Another person that designed tokenomics could be, and another one didn't want to be because they're extremely wealthy and just kind of like, it's a cool idea, but I'm doing other things. Like, this is interesting. I'd love to talk about it. So so the team, very shotgun approach at first, hired a lot of people and fired a lot of people, and ultimately that team ended up being at one point, um, like more than full time. At one point, like 8 people working more than full time, and another maybe 5 people working part time. And all in all, we went through probably 20 different team members.
So you guys did a lot of sounds like juggling around of developers, like you said, firing and hiring. And sound like you've had some people from the Steam background, which I was an early investor in Steam. I know a lot of crypto OGs were from that time as well. So it's interesting to hear you talk about that, because I just remember being on there and hoping to God one of the whales would upvote me and become it would follow me so that I can earn passive income
Yeah.
through blogging. It was fun. Um, so that's how the birth of Genius happened. Was that
Mm-hmm.
by, I mean, I know you were saying inspired by Dash and Steam and other collected ideas, but when it comes to Hex, that had to have been a big inspiration as far as some of the tokenomics. And I know the tokenomics are very different from tokenomics to pumpamentals. But where did Hex come in? Where it was like, I mean, you guys seem similar from a lot of people point
Mm-hmm.
of view.
Where that came in is uh, right at about the point where I and another individual were sitting there going, okay, well, really, I and 2 other individuals, just, one of them you can't really say, um, was a fair contribution with tokenomics. Uh, and not in a good or bad way, but more inspirational way. So I and a couple other people were like, all right, let's do this token. It's time, got all the info we need. And before that, it's like, well, yeah, I decided, let me really look into, um, the Twitter world and the crypto world, see what's going on in there. And at that time, I was also running, you could call it like a savings kind of product, excuse me, that had to do with like storing your value and incentivizing the rewards behind that. And on Twitter, I ran into the whole, hex world left and right, and it never really grabbed my attention. And then someone from the Dash world was saying like, "Oh man, this makes so much sense." So at that point, right at that point, it had already been maybe, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 years of yeah, I think like 4 years of just like passive research. Like not like, all this, everyone that is talking together in, chat room wise, it didn't turn into a whole, working 40 hours a week. It was a very passive research, very passive looking at other ideas, very passive. This is a cool idea, but there's problems with it. Very passively getting inspiration from the world to figure out like, what's going on, right? And so when I found out about Hex and got into that, um, there wasn't a whole lot that was new about Hex. However, um, however, the reward system being weighted on time, which of course, I mean Hex isn't the first to do this, but being weighted on time, that was really interesting, right? But not only was that interesting, but there was a ton of language already developed, because after all, these kind of ideas, you can't tell people about a store of value and get them interested. They're like, store of value? That just sounds like my savings account. Doesn't really sound very interesting because my savings account sucks. Well, no, let me tell you why it doesn't suck, right? It's a very difficult thing to communicate. So, Hex, this is where Hex helped out. Hex helped uh, the ability for words to be used to communicate this better and find other really intelligent people. So that's how ultimately, like, I found Alex, who is somebody who doesn't mind to be docked. And Alex is the PhD in mathematics and engineer, and he found that like really cool. So I'd been talking to Alex for a while, but he really understood what I was talking about with what became Genius. He started to really understand that through metaphors, hex metaphors. And as well, I got very much involved with Hex. Cool. I got this idea for a store of value. I mean, hey, if Hex is exactly what I'm thinking about or what I've been having discussions about, then why not use it? Don't, for me, it's don't recreate the wheel. And within about a couple months, I started finding problems with Hex like really quickly. None of them that seemed to be a big tokenomics issue. And then ultimately, after about like I think it was like a year later, a little more than a year later, I started going really, really hardcore into um, really hardcore into like the communications of that. When it came to Hex, I was in many of Hex's chat rooms, many of Hex's specific chat rooms. And through there, I met other individuals and two individuals who had a lot of other tokenomics ideas. One of them in particular was like, hey, I think this is extremely interesting. This idea that no matter how high the market price goes, then that's kind of like no matter how high you throw something in the air, it's going to fall down with equal energy. So this was like inspiration of one of the tokenomics people behind Hex, which was that like, this is actually a problem everywhere, but people don't see it as a problem because there's no solution. This, quote problem where if the price of any stock is rising or any crypto is rising, ultimately you're going to have people who bought lower and bought lower and bought lower. And no matter what, there's going to come some point where their profits are just too sexy and beautiful that that they're very much happy to leave, right? And if their profits are 1,000x, 2,000x, or even 10,000x, especially if the system was designed to force you to delay your gratification, or you believed force you, but turned out not as much as you thought, um, then you have people doing just that, ending at 1,000x, or saying, "Wow, I 2,000x, I 5,000x. That's amazing." And Hex was very much about that. You hear things about like, don't end early, it's terrible. Your average person who used Hex, if they wanted to end early, they saw and they still see today this very scary sign that with these like animating red and yellow like stripies going like, hey, you need to make sure you absolutely know what you're doing here. Instead of the UI telling you, hey, by the way, you're going to lose 10% of your principal if you end your stake. So Hex made that a reality for far more people than I think any other asset had done. And so therefore, the higher you throw something in the air, the more energy is going to come down. If you 1,000, however you affected the market 2 years ago or 1 year ago when you bought something, right? Like let's say you didn't even push the market by 0.1% or 0.01%. Well, after 1,000x, your 0.01% is going to bring the price down by 1%. Your 10,000x, you as one individual can bring the price down between 1 and 10%, depending where you get in, right? So when you have these holders, right, they're eventually going to want to get that reward, especially in the society we're in. So that itself was a big problem that started with one of the Hex individuals finding very interesting that it was something that there could be a solution to. So that's where Genius started to really explode with momentum and move forward with not just the pre-token, but also starting the plans on how this was going to really work and how these tokenomics were going to go together, and did they work, and was it like game theory that that had a desired outcome, but also game theory that you know you, like a lot of games that you aren't able to cheat, where you aren't able to break the game rules and therefore break the game.
And from my understanding too, because I'm going to ask you kind of, I guess, two questions in one, just to confirm, the initial supply with Genius is half the amount of Hex, right? When it comes to the tokenomics with the token supply.
I think it was about half, maybe like 55-60%.
Okay, because in addition to that, I'm seeing, and when I'm reading more about, and if you want to tell me just the number, and then we'll go into one of the fundamentals, because one thing I'm looking at now is because people only care about price appreciation. You know, a lot of people say they're in for the tech. They just really, no matter if they're investing in the stock or cryptocurrency, they want to know that they're going to make money over time. And the interesting thing that I saw that you've talked about one of your videos was having numerous pumpamentals. So that's outside of like what people are normally or used to hearing. They're used to hearing tokenomics, real world utility. But tell me, pumpamentals. How many different pumpamentals have you implemented with Genius, and what would be the one you want to touch on first that means the most?
That's truly a difficult number to come up with because while while ultimately um, inside the white paper, it was decided for us all to put in and identify these pumpamentals, right? To identify them individually. Um, and in the Genius white paper, obviously, it seems like you've read it a lot, and I remember in your videos that you posted, you had mentioned reading it a lot. Um, Anybody who hasn't seen it should check this out because the pumpamentals section talks very much about the very rudimental thing that matters when it comes to supply and demand. And it turns out not to really, those aren't even exactly the fundamentals. So these pumpamentals, these are strategies. These are things that make things valuable. But the number of pumpamentals, even though like I think 30 were identified in the white paper, and Alex and others, and even some of the developers have discovered ones or discovered ways to categorize it that we really hadn't even thought of. Like, for example, oh, it's really awesome about, it's really awesome, but was not the main point. It just happened to have been, um, the main point was much more important, but the side note was amazing. Was, oh, hey, what's great about people depositing different blockchain asset collateral into the Genius contract to get Genius debt, which many refer to as the stability pool. Oh, it's really awesome about this, Robert. I remember one developer telling me about this, and this developer, he's totally assuming like this was the grand scheme of things. He's like, as people are settling that debt, there's settlements coming out of the market. It's being burned. Like, that's crazy. And I'm sitting there like, what are you talking about? Because when people talk about tech stuff, it takes a lot of listening sometimes to know what they're talking about. And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. Well, like we were aware it burned, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, maybe it's bad. Let me take a whole weekend of looking at it on a spreadsheet and then discussing with Alex or other individual or other individual um, whether or not that's dangerous. And it turns out to be an amazing thing. We're like, cool. So I don't know how many pumpamentals. I do know that recently a video came out called Simply Genius. There's a shortened link for it. It's geni.to/simplygenius, geni.to/simplygenius. And it goes over some of those pumpamentals and fundamentals in very easy to understand language. The video series called Simply Genius is amazing. Very easy to understand.
I'll have to check that one out because, like you said, it sounds like you're discovering new hidden fundamentals, based off what you're saying here, which is interesting too because I'm starting to realize that the fundamentals that are were created to work are going to probably start surfacing once the community understands how to utilize them. For example, the stability pool, which I want to touch on the stability pool, but I also want people, because this is going to be recorded for people to listen. I think when they start from, let's say, the very beginning, and they're going, okay, what am I doing here? I'm creating a miner, and there's a basic miner. There's also an advanced miner, and people can buy it off the market, right off of PancakeSwap, Uniswap, and then go create their miner, or they can use a stability pool. So just kind of start with where people would start, and then kind of explain I think it's one of those learning curves. Once you understand how to do that, then you'll be able to go to the advanced stage and start to try to get a better deal through the stability pool. So what's the main difference for users out there to understand when creating a miner, when you're first starting off, the difference between the basic and the advanced option, and then obviously, the explanation on. I mean, if you've been in Hex, longer pays better, obviously, but just kind of break that down if you can, and explain that.
Okay. All right. If I'm understanding right here, this is the focus is, well, what is the main difference between a basic and advanced miner? And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
and that's a great question. Um, and really, even before that, even more fundamental, really is, well, who wants to use this? Now, chances are, if people who already use Genius are listening to this, they get at least the beginning of the fundamental. But somebody who doesn't use Genius or doesn't even use DeFi, what's the point of that, right? Fundamentally, Genius was designed to be a place where you can store a value, and in order to store that value, you need the tokens to do that, or you hold the tokens and then you just use them for the utility that they are. But ultimately, the whole purpose of it is to do the best that you can possibly do with your passive capital, or the money that you're not using, or the tokens that you're not using to do anything. People out there, they may have all sorts of savings, or they may have all sorts of resources that they can't tap into, and they're like, man, I want to tap into these resources. Like, you sleep 8 hours a day probably, or less or more. Wouldn't that be great if we could all tap into that resource? So Genius itself is how to tap into that financial resource. That's one of the things that I find most exciting about it. And when it comes to that, people today, they understand like, cool, my mom wants to borrow $100 and then she'll pay me $120 back, right? People understand things like this. People also understand, buy something from one place, sell it for higher than another. That helps. And people also very much understand, hey, if I put my money in this special savings account, I'll get 1% a year. Yay! Like, some people are actually excited about that, and I'm not. And almost none of us DeFi people are excited about getting 1% a year, because we know better options exist. So therefore, these users, they're going to want to look into making a Genius miner. Now, people who want to make, let's say, passive income, let's just use a simple phrase that other people don't understand, passive income. People who want to make passive income, they have different options to put their money in. And here, and these options, when they hear things like staking, to most people, the word staking makes no sense. They don't get that it means, like, you're locking something up and you're getting a reward for that. And Bitcoin mining, for example, that made no sense long ago. It didn't make sense to people that by doing Bitcoin mining, it was profitable. So people who are looking for profitable opportunities, and especially techie, nerdy people like myself who wanted to make use of their experience, mining made no sense. But once you actually did it, once you actually did start staking, once you actually started mining, suddenly it made complete sense. So with things like Genius, mining is, I'm going to put it in different terms, in easy to understand terms. Mining is a way to earn passive income, right? And that's attractive. So mining is a way to earn passive income, but the way you're actually going to learn about it is by experiencing it in the first place. Like what you were saying earlier, people getting into a basic miner, and then maybe later they can get into an advanced miner. So the main difference, so here's your question. The main difference between a basic and an advanced miner is that when you end early. If you, when you set up a miner, for anyone that doesn't know, when you set up a Genius miner, what you're doing is you're committing an amount of Genius tokens, and you're committing an amount of time, or you're committing some collateral, right? But you're you're committing an amount of time. It's called a promise period. It's called your promise days, a length in days. So people can break their promises, and that's where the biggest difference is between a basic miner and an advanced miner. With a basic miner, if you have to break your commitment and end earlier than you said, uh, if you're able to do that, given like different blackout days, if you're able to do that, and in like 90% of the time you can, you are not going to lose your principal. You're not going to lose that amount of genius um, that you committed in the beginning. But with an advanced miner, you can lose that. You might, let's say you end a lot later, you don't end that early. Okay, you don't lose any principal, but with an advanced miner, you could lose as much as all of the principal. So once again, with a basic miner, if you get penalized, you end early, you get your principal. You may get some of your interest, you may get almost all of it, you may get none of your interest, whichever. But hey, at least you got your principal. And that is very important to many people in the crypto space, or many new people, right? Many new investors, many new users who want to figure out how to use something. It's very important that they get back what they initially put in. The advanced miner pays differently, as in it performs differently, a little bit differently, and it's a lot juicier. It's a lot more reward. But if it turns out that amount of time you promised for that advanced miner to run, if you have to end it early, you could lose some of your principal, or you could lose half your principal, or you could lose all.
Got you. So definitely, if you're looking at staking, let's say 1 million GENI for 1 year, and you might need that money for whatever reason, a basic miner might be your option, so you don't lose that principal versus the advanced. But if you can, delay gratification, which is I think is the best thing that I've ever done in crypto, and experienced that with Hex. Go with an advanced miner and stick it out, and the
Well,
payouts will be juicier, right?
yeah, and therefore it's like with the Genius system itself. I mean, um, well, to say in hex terms, people will keep um, a certain amount of hex liquid, and then they'll stake a certain amount of hex. But people in the Genius ecosystem, what they're finding out is, instead of having, an amount of liquid Genius and an amount in advanced miners, what they're finding is, well, you know what? Most of these basic miners we can end anytime and get our principal back as if we were just having it liquid. So, so with Genius, uh, you have more utility. You can keep a little bit liquid. You can keep a bunch of basic miners that you might not be able to end all of them at the same time, uh, uh, but it's almost as the same as them being liquid. Just you're earning interest, or you're getting more and more as days go by, rewards allocated to your basic miner. Advanced miner, as we know, it's locked up, right? You're committed. Delayed gratification kicks in. It's all about delayed gratification. And with the basic miners, still delayed gratification. But hey, if you can get your principal back, for a miner that served 300 days and it was supposed to serve 600, and you got a big problem that you're in a pinch and you really want to get some of your genius and liquidate that, you're going to get your original principal back, and that's pretty awesome.
I definitely appreciate the flexibility of that. I think a lot of people in crypto would appreciate that as well. It also gives them a reason not to remain liquid, because there's really no point in just letting Jenny sit in your wallet and not earn. I couldn't make any sense of that unless you're really good at catching the swing trades. And, obviously right now things are volatility is there. I mean, you guys have only been around for 30 days. So, I've heard it best out there. The best time to invest in Bitcoin when there was no liquidity and Satoshi owned most of the supply. So, I mean, definitely right now is a good time to dollar cost average and use basic miners. But that's a good starting point. Getting into the basic
Yeah.
miners and then experiencing that plus the advanced miners. But jumping, into a
Well, if I
much
can
more.
say though, if
What
I
was
can
that?
say,
Oh, go
if I
ahead.
can just say, yeah, uh, Genius having the incredible flexibility that it has is insanely unheard of. And the things it does to achieve that is very novel, because in a world of rules such as smart contracts and such as, like, I guess you can say like 401ks or whatever, in a world of rules, flexibility is very difficult to design. When you and a friend are talking about like a little deal you made where he'll let you borrow, you'll let him borrow $1,000 and you'll pay him back. You guys can always be flexible, right, and figure things out. But in a system where the rules based, flexibility is hard, and Genius has incredible flexibility.
Absolutely. I
the
like
The
being
core
able to
thing
get
of
that.
Genius was really to always give people, hey, if you got your stuff locked away, and if you lock it away for 5,555 days, and you're absolutely screwed if you change your mind in a couple of years, um, you know, the Genius's design was, it needs to be super flexible, where it always has utility, and that's important. I'm glad you appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I think most people would, and definitely, it's scary to do a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year stake, knowing that if you, would end it early, which is something that kept me in hex stakes. I did, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year stakes, and I remember going, man, the price hex is taken off. I wish I could get out of this huge stake, but even though it would have been worth it at the time, I didn't want to take the hit, and I was just, I held through it. But I think my favorite thing right now with Genius, and now I'm starting to figure out. This is after 2 weeks of experimenting with it and trying to figure out on my own, is the stability pool. So break that down for people, because I think this is another aspect that's going to really help um, the overall token price, because it's going to, from my understanding, keep putting sell pressure or buy pressure on the open market, and really give people good deals. Because if you're looking for a cheap deal for a Genius, if you have a good eye, the stability pool is the place to be. So kind of explain that, and then kind of get into how people will be able to kind of find those opportunities as well.
hmm Um, Let me start that off with once again talking about um, the Simply Genius video series that came out. I mean, that came out shortly, only because some people who hear this message, they might get a little bit lost in it, or it might help them finally make sense of some things with Genius and with the stability pool itself. So definitely, no matter who you are, check out this Simply Genius series that an individual named Mike put together. But so when it comes to the stability pool, me personally, I've stopped calling it the stability pool, because that was something that the smart contract implementers called it, just as a way to reference things, so we can know what we're all working on, and know what needs to be worked on next. And it was really difficult to come up with a name for it. Like, hey, do we call it stability pool? Do we call it collateral pool? Do we call it do we call it pumping pool? Like, what do we call this? I just call it Genius now, because this is what Genius itself does. Genius is the machine; it's what it does. So, but I know what you're talking about, the stability pool. So Genius, unlike many other things out there, and what you've probably found, Thomas. Correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know. You've probably found, as more and more as you look into Genius, it is way more novel than you thought. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of just it's the new concepts that are I'm starting to recognize and starting to get more familiar with are so new to DeFi. It's going to inspire so many different developers out there to not only probably try to copycat what you're doing, but I think eventually build around Genius, and ultimately, that makes like a big ecosystem in the overall picture here. But it's gonna definitely it's a game changer, and it's something that takes time, because even with Bitcoin at the very beginning, my very first investment in Bitcoin, I didn't know what the hell I was buying. I didn't know how to mine it. I didn't
Yeah,
know how to do
yeah.
anything. And then the same thing with Ethereum. It was $7. I'm like, I'm buying it because all I have is this Bitcoin. and then there's this thing that has to do with smart contracts. So I just jumped in, asked questions later, and now I'm starting to realize what I purchased, and I'm not having any buyer's remorse at all. I'm actually buying more and staking, further out.
Yeah, with like, for example, a journalist I knew from Cointelegraph, my bad, Cointelegraph. Um, Maybe I think it was late 2016. Yeah, he was marching up my door like, man, you've got to pay attention to Dash. You've got to pay attention to Dash. And I'm like, yeah, okay, or I have like, I don't know, I think 10,000 Dash, and you got to pay attention to Dash. And I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, wow, this is worth like significantly more than I had. And he was telling me some things about it. I decided to look more into the novelties of Dash itself. I did, and I was like, wow, I need to pay more attention to this, right? Um, and I'm very glad I did. So, yeah, the things that have novelties to them, that's what we really want to find here. And you see many projects, and this is human nature, really. Many projects, many products in the crypto space. Someone has an idea, or this other developer has an idea, and it's really exciting, it's really cool. And then they go ahead and they make that idea, right? When it comes to Genius, these were ideas that didn't get implemented once they were thought of. These are ideas that, oh, that is insanely exciting. Well, let's let that simmer, because all technologies you make as a technologist, someone who's been doing technology for more than 2/3 of my life, I've realized that every time you have a solution, you always have problems with it. I mean, maybe not always, but a well thought out solution where the problems that it introduces, are also thought about, um, is really a good thing. And this is why we have software with so many bugs really in it, and then less bugs and new features and more bugs. Genius was a very well thought out plan and game theory. And all of the ideas behind it simmered for anywhere between 2 to 5 years. And so one of the biggest innovations, I mean, there's so many really big innovations in Genius that technologically are not in anything you'll find in crypto land. But one of the top innovations is the stability pool, is what I'll call Genius debt. Now, in the traditional world, so Genius has something called Genius debt. And in the traditional financial world, when we hear debt, we've been very programmed to think of it as a bad thing. Unless you're like a business and that is your business. But debt in the Genius system is different. And what it turns out to be is, you read about the rules of creating a miner, and you find out, okay, I can only create a miner with Genius. Well, that's not 100% of the story. 100% of the story is you can create a Genius miner. You can only create it with Genius or Genius debt. So the Genius token itself has normal ERC-20 rules, and then Genius debt has different rules. So you see, like, no matter what token you have in like the Ethereum world or whatever, it's got rules that go by a standard, right? It's standard. And maybe there's some different innovations with like your function of staking or your function of mining or your function of transferring, because we decide, we'll take 5% of what you transfer and give it to a treasury account to try to do human things with it to make it more flexible than it really is, because it's not that flexible. So then we have is Genius debt. You have your token and you have debt. So the thing that you need Genius tokens for, which is to create a Genius miner, there's this other token thing called Genius debt. And it's not something you can hold. It's not an ERC-20. Genius debt is one of the few novelties that is also one of the few biggest game changers in DeFi itself. And I should probably explain it after that, but I figured I'd let you say something.
Well, yeah. If you can jump in, how you would use it, though. I mean, it's about going in there and finding an opportunity to, go in with BNB or BUSD, I believe, right? Let me take a look here. So yeah, you're going
Yes.
in with your BNB or BUSD, because I know there's a GENI option as well. So I guess what a person would want to know is, You're talking about the debt and whatnot. How are they going to implement this and find a cheaper value
Yeah,
versus
right. Like,
what's on the market?
yeah, like why would anybody care about Genius debt when there's Genius token, right? Like, don't give me more things to think about. Well, some people might. It's very overwhelming, the crypto world, right? There's so much stuff, and most of it is a waste of your time. Um, so yeah, how would someone use Genius debt? Um, well, two ways. One is when you make your Genius miner, the Genius contract itself will also incentivize you to deposit collateral to make a miner instead. So if you're sitting there and you're like, you know what, I'm going to deposit like a million Genius, or I'm going to deposit like 6 million Genius, or about I think that's about $1,000. I'm going to deposit about $1,000 worth of Genius, get my miner. Woohoo! I'm excited. Um, but the Genius contract is telling you like, hey, you can deposit $1,000 worth of this ERC-20 or the native token or the stable coin. You deposit $1,000 worth, and you're actually going to get more than $1,000 worth of Genius. Maybe you get like $1,010 worth of Genius, or 1,050. And so that's like a no-brainer, right? It's like, let me do this option because I also have USD coin. So how do you use Genius debt? One of the ways is the system, the Genius contract gives discounts for miners, a limited amount of discounts. And those discounts come with people who are backing the price of Genius with different blockchain collaterals, just like what many algorithmic based stablecoins do. Like DAI, for example, DAI is backed by many different collaterals: Ethereum itself, um, USD Tether, and USDC, and I think like two more. So, uh, so that's the one way that you use Genius Debt, because it happens to be economical. You got lucky to see it, for the first time, to see that there's a discount, um, and then you took advantage of that. The other way that you use Genius Debt is, well, you're not really using Genius Debt, but you're interacting with it, is the Genius contract itself. The Genius contract itself right now is what's happening right now in the Genius world is collateral is being deposited into the contract, and people are taking that collateral instead of dumping on the market. You have a lot of whales and stuff, or you have a lot of people who, they're in a position where they're like, wow, cool, I got a lot more Genius than I had before, or I got a lot more value. I'd like to sell that or dump that. Or you know what? Or I want to mine X amount of it, right? And I want to take some profits. So a lot of people have been doing that with the quote stability pool right now, and that has been absorbing a lot of market pressure, a lot of market selling pressure, right? We don't like selling pressure. I mean, we don't like it when we're holding, right? Or we don't like it when someone else sells, and then we're like, oh man, there's not as much capital available for me to sell if I were to want to sell. So the Genius Debt, the second utility of that itself is it gives people out in the public a way to redeem Genius. They don't have to go to Uniswap. They don't have to go to a centralized exchange in the future. They don't have to deal with anybody. Or maybe Uniswap can't serve you anymore in your country, and it turns out one exchange doesn't serve you, right? Or maybe Genius gets gate kept, sort of like other people complaining, we're gate kept on Coin Market Cap. This sucks. There's multiple coins, dozens of coins gate kept on Market Cap, by the way, on that website. Um, so so who cares? There's always a place you can redeem your Genius. So that's the other second big thing, is that Genius Debt allows people to be able to redeem their Genius for stable coins and native tokens.
And I'll have to admit too, one of the things I literally slept on, I was going to stay awake for it, and I noticed it, was I was clicking around on the auction tab one night on Ethereum, and I don't know, I don't really hear many people talk about the auction so much until recently. I started seeing it in a few chats, but I saw a really beefy, like it was on the Ethereum network, a 50, I think it was like a 50 million Genny stake for like 366 days. and the bid on it was like 4.6 million Jenny with a few hours ago. I don't know where it ended at, but I was like, oh my gosh, if somebody, I'm sure a lot of people fell asleep like I did, and maybe that person got a good deal, but how does that work? Because now you can auction off these stakes that you have, and then people are going to do a bit, kind of a bid war over it. But if somebody were to just bid, you know, a million Jenny, does it work like that, or can you set it to start at a certain point, at a certain
We,
amount?
those are really, really good questions. And did you see that bid recently where someone from the community, what they were doing was they were selling like a Genius coin, like that they made or something, like a metal coin, and it looked really cool, right? This physical metal coin. And instead of going to eBay with that physical metal coin, and you know what? Actually, I want to know who won that. I'd really love to know. Instead of going to eBay and selling, instead of the person going to like Etsy and selling their art, or going to eBay and selling their art, what they did was they created a Genius auction for a small amount of Genius. They created a Genius miner, containing a small amount of Genius, and they sent that miner to be auctioned, right? Like to an auction pool. So everyone who's using the Genius DAT, they saw that and they probably thought, why on earth would I bid for this extremely, extremely small amount of Genius? Like, I don't want this. But he told the community, hey, look, the winner of this bid, um, whoever wins this, I'm going to give you this Genius coin. And it looked really cool. I got to say that again. I'm going to give you this Genius coin, and if you're the winner, get in touch with me and then send me X amount of Ether or X amount of stablecoin in for shipping. So then I'll know it's you. I'll know that's actually you, right? Because we're talking. I say send me exactly this much for shipping, and then the person does that, and they're like, cool, let me ship the coin to you. So that was really neat. That was somebody using the Genius auction system to get paid what they wanted to be paid in Genius, and the shipping too. But you see, like, while that doesn't really sound very interesting or exciting, what is cool is that auction that he did benefits everyone in the Genius ecosystem. It adds, a certain supply gets burned, different shares, are being held long term, and there's a lot of micro, like, economical things that happen that, as they stack up more and more and more, they add up into a big snowball. But this is a snowball of benefits to all users across the entire system that turns into a big snowball of benefits.
And
Before with the auctions, but I'm sorry, what?
I was going to say it also adds to the flexibility because even though you're stuck in an advanced miner for let's say 1 year, if you put it up for auction, that could be your way of getting your value back by selling that, right? Am I right by
Yeah.
saying that?
Well,
Because you're
yeah, but
you're auctioning it off, right? Like you need money because the only way you'd want to end was if you need the money for whatever reason. But it's an advanced miner. You could just set that bad boy for auction at, let's say, when the price is 5, 10x. If and when that happens, I think it definitely will do a 10x from here. I don't question that, but then it would be worth a lot more to put up for auction at that point. It makes sense, especially if it's month number 8 and you got 4 more months to go. Wouldn't that make sense for somebody to do as well?
totally. And I want to add to that. I mean, that's very well said, Thomas. And I'd like to add to that is one of the many avenues that people have, for liquidity. And by the way, in regards to Genius debt, right? We're like, well, why would you use debt? What's great about this? Can I tell you about, with an insane number of hours of time I've spent doing blockchain analytics, analyzing all the transactions on the Genius contract? Can I tell you about something really interesting I found for people using Genius debt?
Go for it.
All right, cool. I mean, I figured you weren't going to say no, but so this was also by design, or the intention. So what I saw, and I was so delighted to see this, is that there was a time where, and there was a time where if you redeemed your Genius directly to the Genius contract, you were getting much more USDC, or sorry, DAI actually, you're getting more value than if you were to sell it on the open market. So I saw multiple times where people who noticed that, um, I'm going to use some easy numbers for this example, by the way. So none of these numbers are true numbers, but it's just an example. So for example, I'd see some people who redeemed their Genius, and I look at their transactions, and I would see, awesome. Okay, this guy saw that, he could get Genius for, let's just say $1. He could get Genius for $1 on the open market. So he spent all of his stable coins. I think it was like 2,000 and something for one example I'm thinking of. He spent 2,000 and something dollars to buy Genius on the open market. And Genius still being in his infancy, let's say that pushed Genius up 0.1%, right? Some people get really excited about 0.1%. Maybe it was 0.2 or 0.5. And then he sold it. He sold that Genius that he bought from the open market. He redeemed it from the Genius contract, and he got back like something like $2,400. So from 2,000 to 2,400. Now this was all that person could do. And then other transactions later, someone redeemed, maybe I would see like someone redeem their Genius and get like $500 worth of Genius, and they're happy. But I see another person who redeemed, let's say, I would see, before they redeemed, they bought from the open market. All right, cool. So, okay, I see here. Nice. Wow. This person, so in a time of less than 1 minute, this person, I don't remember the exact figures, but they bought like as much as they could, because the amount of redeeming, the amount of collateral left in the pool at the time was less. Maybe they bought like $8,000 worth of Genius from the open market, pumped it in at that time, when Genius was less liquid, pumped it a nice sweet like 2%, 3%, maybe 4%, and redeemed it from the stability pool and made an arbitrage there. Made maybe like $1,000, 12.5%, and also pumped the price like 4%. So
Wow.
that was the design intention of Genius to do that. And I was very delighted to see it happening many times. Some people, they just wanted to redeem it anyways. They're like, cool, I was going to sell that anyways, but I'm getting more here. Great, let me do that. And what people don't realize is the more people do this and find these opportunities, right? The more eventually what's going to happen in an end game is that eventually what's going to happen is, like today, the only way you can get Zen, right, is from somebody who, they claimed their Zen, after they waited, whoever knows how long. Some people waited, like 100 days, and then it finally got minted, right? And then they sell it on the open market, if that was their plan. So eventually, Genius is going to turn into that, where the only Genius you're going to be able to get is the stuff that was minted that day. Because the reason why I say that that's an end game that I see is extremely probable is because the more people deposit collateral to the Genius contract, to get a nice deal, or because let's say, when you're a whale, it's a big problem when you're getting early into a crypto. When you get in early, you're just like, man, I believe in this so much. I would put down 200 grand for this. I believe in this so much. I don't need to believe in the development team because it's a finished product. Man, I'd put $500,000, or I'd put $1 million. Then they look at so this is the problem, right? It's not a problem that they want it because they want it. That's their own desire, and they see the future potential. But the part that becomes a problem is when your whale goes to the open market. And so if you're a whale and you find something new, you want to get it. You don't want to wait until later. So a lot of whales, they find themselves buying tiny amounts all the time, because they're like, damn, if I wanted to buy this and get it over with and get my time done, I'll just buy 200 grand on the market. but I'm going to push the price so insanely high that I'm not even going to get, quote, $200,000 worth of genius. So this is what debt, this is a huge problem that genius debt solves, that even traditional finance doesn't solve. You know, if you want to buy a lot of a certain stock, the debt, if you want to buy a lot of a certain stock, you can't do this. If you want to buy a lot of a certain early crypto or even late crypto, you can't do it. If you're Michael Saylor and you want to put X about $1 billion into Bitcoin, you're gonna have to talk shit about it for a few years before you get the other rich people who are following you interested, and yeah, anyways, let me slow down a little bit. So here you can put down 200 grand to get genius as a whale and not push the price like 2x in one instance. Everybody loves that, right? Everybody would love that. It's actually a bad problem. It keeps whales out of cryptos early. And if you're a whale and you're fired up to get something, maybe in 1 week you end up pumping the price because you put 100 grand into it over a week, but you really wanted to put like 1 million. That's a huge opportunity lost for everyone in the system. When that whale then, a month later is like, oh, cool, check out these NFTs that I really like. Then they get into that. I'm not saying prevent them from the other opportunity. I'm saying innovation happens everywhere. So this is exciting. This is cool. And Genius Debt has so many different facets from it that a lot of technologists and blockchain enthusiasts are going to find it extremely interesting.
Sounds like swing traders out there, if they find out about this, are going to love that too, with that arbitrage opportunity you were just explaining about.
Yeah, you would think that Genius is only for people who want to save their value over time. But no, it's also a system for Genius has 3 users. It has the people who want to save, and what you're saying here, people who swing trade. Like if you swing trade, like you're going to want to pay attention to this. And it's also for miners and block validators, by the way, because if you're the first person to do something, you get Genius reward to do it.
You see, there's a lot of ways to make money here in the short term and the long term, and it looks like for me, I'm looking at an opportunity to do the swing trading, to make more, to put into long term positions as well, because then ultimately it just becomes free genius. Making your money work for you by using what you created through the stability pool to have that opportunity to do that. Where it's these new concepts, like I'm saying, it's hard to absorb because a lot of these ideas are brand spanking new. So
You're never going to absorb it, just by reading the white paper once. It's something that you'll absorb it little by little, and you'll absorb a lot when you actually jump in and use it. But you're right. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of really good things to it.
you got to experience it, because once a swing trader comes into the chat and goes, "Bro, I just made such and 20%, 10% off doing this through the stability pool, and this is what I did," people are going to go, DM me, how did you do that? And it just brings more volume. It brings more
No,
attention. And then
totally.
a lot of those users might even end up buying and staking long term. And it's just so many different ways it'll help the project, versus where sometimes swing trading on projects is like their worst nightmare. People hate it. It keeps it from continuing to go up because people are swing trading it. I even saw project recently that was like, wow, like how
Well,
could we have prevented this?
and besides that, like you're right. Like when you really do just gotta experiment with things that you want to learn about instead of sitting in front of a book and sitting in front of a white paper for a long time. Like long ago, I'm sure you saw a piece of this long ago when when I first got into Bitcoin mining and then it first started making sense. Um, I was explaining it to a lot of people, and I may as well, while I was explaining it to people, I may as well have just been a monkey, like screaming and like smacking the table. They didn't understand me. Like a lot of people didn't understand me. This was very early 2011. And the people who years later took a little bit of extra time to listen, they're like, this sounds too good to be true. And I heard that so many times that I ended up saying, well, it is too good and it is too true. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but you mentioned the swing traders who end up saying, damn, I just made this amount of money. And other people are like, okay, like we're all trying to make that kind of money. What happened? So when I was mining, for Bitcoin, um, that was like, that was like that was more than 12 years ago. Or no, it was about exactly 12 years ago when I actually started mining it. Um, at that time, like one of my dream car was a Corvette ZR1, like America's like only supercar, right? And a lot of people would argue with whether or not that is. But I really loved the ZR1. I wanted one, and my means, most people around me with the means I had, most people around me be like, all right, good luck. You're not going to have a ZR1 for a while. Um, but then next thing I have a Porsche and I have a ZR1. That got a lot of people's attention. Like, hold on, how is this? How hold on a second. How is this like? Where the hell do you make the money? I'm like, dude, Bitcoin mining, dude. I am so interested in Bitcoin mining. Suddenly, none of the crap you told me made sense, but I'm willing to put a little more effort.
Yeah, word of mouth got around pretty quick, and that's the best way to gain new users is by the experience of another person going, hey man, like you got to experience this, and then they tell their friend. The next thing you know, everybody is talking about it
Dude,
because the
when
opportunity's
Bitcoin,
there. It's just not tapped into yet, Robert. It's
mhm.
no one
when
understands.
when Bitcoin was blowing up, and when Hex was blowing up, it was it was blowing up at a time where people were taking major profits, and then other people were willing to be that exit liquidity. I'm not saying in a bad way, but remember the whole Hex flex time? Like that's when Hex was blowing up. Hex wasn't blowing up because people who hated Hex heard about Pulse Chain and they were like, cool, suddenly Hex is cool. Hex was blowing up and Bitcoin was blowing up because people were seeing their flexes or people were hearing their success stories. And that's what people want. They want that success too. They want to do something to. I mean, there's many things people want, but in this context, people do want something better to do with their money that just sits there, or people do want opportunities to get arbitrage, whether it's buying something on eBay and fixing it up and then reselling it for higher. And people want opportunity and they want success because they don't feel like they've hit something where they can say they're successful. They want that. Um, so that's that's the that's the best marketing. That's what people want. And these things like Genius and novel, the decentralized finance apps, they practically scream that out at people. There's a lot of success. People are doing really well.
Well, I think you might have answered a question that in my VIP group, which I got to invite you because everyone would love to have you there. I'll send you the link
Oh
when we're
yeah,
done
I'd love to
chatting
be there.
here. They had a question, and I kind of think you've answered what your direction you're going. But the group members wanted to know because obviously Bitcoin didn't have a marketing budget, didn't do anything as far as marketing. It's exactly what you're explaining. The flexing and people making gains off of it, and the word of mouth, and people hearing about it. And then Hex had, you know, outrage marketing, the flexing, and all that. They wanted to know, like, how do you expect Genius to grow from here with no marketing allocation at this point or a referral system? Because I think Hex's early success was the influencers obviously going, oh shit, I could get a referral bonus on the AA lobby, and that just really scaled really well for Richard and Hex. What do you feel about how would you expect Genius to grow from here without having that referral or anything like that for marketing?
A few ways. For one, referral bonuses, right? When it comes to referral bonuses, they're not helpful at all if you have a terrible product. They're extremely helpful if you're a great product. But referral bonuses, the whole point of them is to is really for someone else to get someone else into something because they think they'll like it. So then that other person, they heard about it. The person who gets a referral bonus wants them to get into it a little bit more, maybe, or maybe not. And the person gets to try it, right? And that's one of the most difficult things for people to try it, right? Um, so for one, get people to try it. Now, I'm not saying that's the plan, but what I'm saying is it's an important thing. And and this does touch upon what we're saying, and it doesn't answer it completely, like what I was saying, but you're right. So what we have here is, all right, Genius has had $0 put down for marketing by well, had $0 put down for marketing by myself, and there's never been a company plan to market Genius. Now that scares a lot of people, right? It scares a lot of people, and some people are so scared by it that you can never, excuse me, you can never um, present evidence and argue with them to get them to change their mind. But what does, and what is amazing, and what happened a lot with Bitcoin, it happened. This is why Bitcoin was successful, um, is that people were inspired to market it, and that's what you've seen with Genius for um, the entirety that Genius has been around so far, but also including 6 months before Genius, about 6 months, when the Genius sacrifice went out, and even prior to that as well, when the pre-token was launched. When the pre-token was launched, uh, that was different. It wasn't so much marketing, but you had people who were like, cool, I'll take some free coins, or I'll take these coins, or I'll buy them from this person to that person, and I'll put up liquidity. Why not? We solve a chicken and egg problem. So first off, I'm not a marketer. I can't tell you a marketing plan. I've worked with many marketing officers, marketing people. But the first thing you got to do, here's what you got to do. Here's where, how do you expect Genius to blah, blah, blah without a referral system, without a marketing budget existing? And the truth is, same here. I didn't expect that in the first place. When I got into Bitcoin, I didn't look at it like, cool, this is a proven investment thing that I'm going to, that I'm going to capture over 1,000,000x on. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at Bitcoin like this. Well, I did. At first, I looked at it like, why wouldn't you just use PayPal? Like, I didn't get it. And then when I started mining, I looked at it like, holy mother of God, I am getting paid by an entity that doesn't exist. I think that is so cool. So it was like a financial opportunity for me, right? And I was looking for that. Sort of like with Genius, there's financial opportunity. There's financial opportunity that does not depend on buying Genius, or does not depend on holding it. So that was me with Bitcoin, right? So I'm not expecting this either. I'm not like, oh, I expect Genius to do that, But what I think is important here for people to understand is, one, you need a great product. And myself, everyone who's in Genius, we all are like, wow, this is a great thing to help us do what we want to do. It's a great product. So number one, you need a great product. Number two, you need it needs to be useful. So yeah, a great product needs to be useful. And then second of all, it needs to actually do that, right? But second of all, you need to really hyper focus and know who it is for. I mean, you can't do any marketing or budget or this or that or referral system when you don't know who's going to use it. So you have to really know who is your user. Not like, don't like, well, it can be used for this, it can be used for that, it can be used for that. It can be used for a billion things. And that was Ethereum, to be frank. And that's why it was a lot harder. It took many more years for Ethereum to explain what it was doing. But yeah, with Genius, the target audience has been very, in business terms, you see target audience, but really the user and the use case, it was very well defined for it to be used as a store of value. And a great product for a store of value is not only something that holds your value, not holds the number of US dollars you have, because we're all aware of inflation, but one, it preserves your value, and that increases over time. Second, like, user is like somebody who helps that happen, who is someone who finds arbitrage opportunities. And I don't mean just trading between an open market. I mean the fact that there's the open market trading and there's the Genius contract itself. So you gotta really know your users, and that's and then the third is, if that is successful, right? Like, how do you expect this to happen without a referral system, without that? Well, if you have a great product and the the people who are using it, the product is hyper focused around them, giving them utility. Then what comes from there is what has happened with Genius is other people stepping up and being like, wow, I want the word to get out. For example, this individual who made the Simply Genius, you know, I've known him for, I think, 2 years. He made this because he was very inspired for it. It was a whole production. I have no idea how much he spent on it. Actually, I would like to know. I'll just hit him up and say, hey, you might tell me how much you spent on it. I'm just curious. So it's called Simply Genius, and it's great. And people are understanding it. Now, is this marketing? Right? Like marketing is a thing businesses do. Oh, no, this is just other people finding out about it. So we got to remember, we don't need to think about like this coin and that coin. They need marketing. They need this to be successful. That's the old way of thinking. Um, uh, it's also but this other thing is like, well, are people going to hear about this? Are people going to hear about it? Right? And for people to hear about it, you have to inspire. You have to inspire other people. They have to be inspired by the product to talk about it or market it or etc. Like in the Bitcoin world, many businesses formed around it. So people have to be able to form a business around it or inspired to market it. And then two, um, the price itself, the success stories itself. I mean, not always the price, but the success stories itself. Like in Zen, if you're an investor, if you're somebody who's investing, looking for a bunch of different cryptos, and you look at Zen, and I know it doesn't seem you have favored Zen so much, so this is a great example. If you want to be a successful investor and you look at Zen, you're going to go, nope, no, thank you. That looks like a perfect logarithmic down curve, right? It looks like the stupidest investment in the world. However, you can't look at that for success. The other marketing is people's success stories. People are having success using Zen. People are making money with that. Even though you see a price thing going down and down and down, people are making money with that. So same thing here with Genius. It's success stories and it's price. Um, well, for people who only look at price, right? And for people who only look at market cap and etc. That is far more powerful spreading the word of Genius than any amount of marketing. And I think that's going to happen because it's happened already and things are working. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think for me, because I'm a Hexican. I'll always claim to be a Hexican. I'm just not, a Hex maxi. I have an open mind to anything that's, I'm willing to invest in that has an opportunity to present. Basically, if something presents an opportunity, I'll get into it. I think with Zen, it's just the Jack approach that he has with the influencers he talks to are very bitter towards Richard. And for me, it's like, I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me. I think he kind of bit into that with some of the things he says about him. And I kind of
Yeah,
like,
I'll agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
so I like how you appreciate the technology that Richard, he's not a developer, that he managed to put developers together to do for him. And obviously it's been very successful. But for me as a Hexican, which was going to lead me into the next topic, and I'm not going to take you hold you hostage for much longer. We'll
I,
touch on a few more things, couple more things here if you don't mind. Would be the opportunity that was given to me as a Hexican with my Hex stakes through Hexodus. So I know that's complex, but just for any people out there that have Hex stakes, I just want you to let them know, Robert, um, what the opportunity is for them at this point if they have a Hex stake right now, and what they would get through utilizing Hexodus, which is only available on Ethereum network, right?
yeah, I'd love to talk about that very much. And I'm over here like, yeah, because it's cool. It's useful. But by the way, man, I would love. I've been trying to talk with Hex Maxis and Bitcoin Maxis. Well, actually, I haven't lately. For example, his name just escaped me, but he was saying like, "Hey, Robert, come on my show, Robert." I was like, "Woo!" I mean, he was saying terrible things about me and Genius, while his I remember his the other co-host. I don't remember the guy. It escaped me, but I remember his name is Sam Stolt is the co-host, And he's over there the whole time going, well, actually, this is kind of interesting. Or he's saying like, well, yeah, uh, your conclusion is right, but it could also be concluded something else, right? So I've been trying to like, I was Jim Rat Crypto. I was hitting him up like crazy, like, yeah, I'll go on your show. I'll go on your show. No, it turns out he just wanted to say on his show, get on my show, come on my show. And then when I'm like, dude, I'd love to, he's just like, let's talk a little bit. So, a macho facade, right? But
Yeah, he's not really. I wouldn't consider him a Hexican. He's like a late. He just pretty late to the show.
it,
Is my honest
so
opinion, but it is what it is.
so anyways, besides that, the Hexodus thing, besides that, um, personally, I love talking with maxis, because you can learn a lot. And as you were saying, like with Jack, you don't appreciate a lot of things he said about Richard. I think that's why Genius has a huge advantage. Is myself, and a lot of the other core influence for Genius is design. We all really weren't people that were maxis. We weren't interested in talking shit about another person. We were more interested in hearing about their crazy ideas and hearing about why they really believe in their psychotic mind, why it's going to work. And then we would actually get to hear it. So we all understand, all of us collectively in the tokenomics team, we all understand the tokenomics of so many cryptos because we're not maxis and we really wanted to know. So Genius has this thing called Hexodus, right? Genius also has this thing called proof of Exodus, which we can talk about later or something. But a proof of well, just a quick tidbit for like 30 seconds. Proof of Exodus, what it really is it's a way to upgrade or to update software kind of things without it disrupting the core principles of any cryptocurrency thing, without it disrupting decentralization, without it disrupting the end user having a choice, without it disrupting um, the tokenomics, and without it disrupting so many things that are really important, without disrupting the fact that there can't be an admin key. For example, contracts today, how do they update? There's a few ways. Well, maybe there's two main ways. One is, let's just call it a migration. One is you have version one of a contract, you have version two of a contract. And version one of the contract, turns out there's bugs, turns out there's other things, whatever. But here's version two, it's way better. So let's help everyone from version one migrate to version two. So they do that in a combination of smart contracts, and then they do that in a combination of normal Web 2 technologies, which completely breaks all of the cool things about crypto, right? A lot of potential problems. Not that it doesn't solve the migration issue. And then the other way is today it's referred to as proxies, smart contract proxies. Where you have a smart contract, really where its only job is to know the correct contract to pass calls onto and do things with that. And there's a lot of problems there. There's massive problems there. You have an admin key, you have one person or a company where major issues could happen, especially if some kind of security issue happens on their part, something that isn't secured by blockchain technology. Next thing you know, your contract, you're actually talking with another one, you lose all your funds, you're screwed. So those are bad possibilities. Proof of Exodus is a means of upgrading contracts that allows anybody to, quote, do the upgrade, but it's hard to understand. It's a new concept. In my opinion, it's the absolute best way for any contracts to update. It allows anyone in the world to do the update. If somebody wants, or if one of the developers that has access to the Genius code, they can completely make a completely different new Genius a year later, launch it, and then how people get into it is by them exodusing from the Genius contract into this new contract. So that gives people another choice. There's nothing better than using an app or being an investor and you always have choices open, aka flexibility, right? People are about to see how valuable flexibility is going to be in the DeFi world. So that's what Hexodus is. Hexodus is an app and it's part of the Genius contract, part of the Genius bunch of smart contracts. Hexadus is an example of how something like proof of Exodus works. So what Hexadus does, it can't do it in the same way of proof of Exodus, which is a completely autonomous, completely admin keyed, like no admin key, completely automatic way of helping people upgrade their Hex experience into a Genius experience, or their Hex stakes to Genius miners. Hex doesn't have a proof of Exodus function. So Hexadus is basically an app that tries to do proof of Exodus as much as possible to show people, to show hexagons, hey, you see, and to show hexagons and other people in DeFi, hey, look, this is potentially a great way for updates to happen. All right, tech out of the way. Would you like to explain what Hexadus is, people, or do you want me to say it's a way to make your hex stakes turn into Genius miners?
I mean, that kind of, from what I understood, that kind of sums it up. I guess the example you'd want to give, like if we can, let's say you have 1 million hex staked, and it's a 365-day stake, a 1-year stake. If you choose to end that, let's say at day 300, what happens? You're using that stake to now transfer into a Genius miner, and you're taking the hex penalty, but then you're getting rewarded in Genius. At what rate, though? That's kind of where I'm like, I stopped there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I was like, I got to talk to Robert first. I was about to try and do it, and I'm like, I got a lot of stakes to mess with, but I want to know like what happens there.
Yeah, I'm like thinking to myself, should I start with this or should I start with that? Whichever, either way, it'll work out. So when you early end a stake in the hex world, so hey, if there's any hexagons out there who are hearing about this, we're about to speak the same language. When you early end your stake, no matter what happens, you either get 0 hex or you get some hex. Or you get more than your principal, you just don't get all your interest. Cool. So no matter what, when you early end, you either get 0 hex or you get some amount of hex. So you get some amount of liquidity, right? And then whatever you lost, everybody in the hex world benefits from it, right? And so what Hexadus does is you can use the Genius app to end your miner, just for convenience sake. But what you do is you register your hex stake with the Hexadus contract, and you register your stake, and then, and from there, it either gets approved or declined, sort of like what we were talking about before, like with anything needing an upgrade, needing an admin. More about that in a little bit. So, and by the way, Genius doesn't have any admin keys. Hexadus contract, on the other hand, does have an admin that, because we didn't want oracles or anything like that, it does have an admin to decide whether or not you were trying to hack the information or whether or not you were trying to submit false information. Yeah, and on chain, people will be able to see, okay, was this person honest, right? What we have is you register your hex stake that you ended, and of course by doing that, you then it gets approved, and cool, and then you're about to get a Genius miner. What I want to put at you, by the way, is that so Hexadus lets you do what you would normally do with early end mining. You get some liquidity, you get some of your hex back, you're happy. But then what about the hex you lost? Well, Hexadus, for the principal that you lost, that's where you benefit. The interest you lost, it's lost. The Genius contract won't help you with that, and the Hex contract won't help you with that at all. Instead, people in the Hex world are like, yay, thank you for your service, thank you for early ending. So whatever principal you lost, that is going to dictate how much Genius you get to put into a miner. To make math simple, to make math really simple, however much hex you lost, like you put in 1 million hex, and you early ended your stake. You only got 100,000 hex back. So you lost 900,000 hex. If you wanted to determine how much genius you're going to get, you multiply that by 1.6. And well, really, you multiply it by the constant phi. But for really easy math, you multiply it by 1.6, and that's how much genius you're going to get. So in the Hexadus app, it's approved. You click to mint your genius miner. You're going to get X amount of genius, and you select how many days you want to mine it for. So if you early end a 5555 stake, hex stake, your Hexadus genius miner, you can have it run as much as 4,444 days. Or you know what? You can just have it run for 90 days, the minimum amount of days. Then you have that full liquidity. You have the hex principal that you got back, and in a minimum 90 days, you have the genius liquid to do what you want with. So Hexadus is a way for people to get more bang from their early end stake buck. And by the way, if you ended, remember we had a lot of things on social media saying, remember the 25th of November. And the plan was too for the launch team to have it launch then. And a lot of people were like, all right, remember what? Well, November 25th, 2022 is the date where if you ended your hex stake on that day, so if you early ended hex stakes a month ago, almost 2 months ago, you can mint rewards. So if you early ended from November 25th and onward, today and in the future, until the whole reserve of the Hexadus reserve, which is 1.2 billion genius, until that's used up, all of your early end stakes can benefit you. The more you lost, the more you get.
Well, that's a nice way to redeem your hex early and not totally just take it for a loss. You'll also get some Jenny too, which if you're bullish on Jenny, it's a win-win. And that's how I was looking at it. Now that I know that direct math, I know what I'm going to be doing as far as strategy going forward. Which I got just one more thing we'll cover before I'll let you get back to living life. I know it's Sunday. I know it's been a couple hours almost. So I appreciate you hanging in there. I'm going to ask, what are your expectations for Jenny on Pulse Chain? Because I know that if we get the carbon copy over there, is this something that you think will, is the community big enough for us to be excited about it? Do you think there'll be life over there? People that are going to be providing liquidity? Because as you know, when we get these copies over on Pulse Chain, it all depends on, are people going to put money over there and utilize the ecosystem? Because I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, we're going to get all our stakes over there that we have in Jenny, anything liquid, probably NFTs, everything like that. So, what are your thoughts on that um, as far as Pulse Chain?
A lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on it. And your question on what are my expectations of it, my answer is pretty boring. I don't have any expectations on it. I truly don't. Um, Please understand, I have a life where every time I find out that I have an expectation, I actually like do emotional work to figure out how to get rid of that. Um, that's something I've been doing for about 6 years now. Um, so I truly don't have expectations on Pulse Chain, but I do have a lot of thoughts. When Pulse Chain was first announced, I thought to myself, like, all right, he's gonna have it released within, I forget what did he first say? Was it 6 months? Was it at three? I don't remember. Do you remember?
I believe it was 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I hope this happens because everything that I sold and sacrificed for would be worth like a lot of money right now. I remember at the time, and then I just,
Hmm.
you know, the
No,
rest.
totally.
We've just been waiting.
So, when I first heard about it, I was like, I would like that. That's really cool. I would like that. I support what Richard does. I like it. Cool. I'd like a team to do that. Here's my sacrifice money. When that part happened. But as far as the 3 months go, I was like, oh no. You know, like two of the main Ethereum founders I know personally. And I was just like, and even the Dash crew, do you remember with Dash? It was like, um, we're going to have, oh man, what was it called? Dash platform? evolved dash evolution. I don't know what it's called today. They were like, hey, we're going to finish this in 6 months. And I'm like, dude, I was telling the CEO of the time of the Dash Core group, I was like, you're not going to get this done in 6 months like you guys think you are. I mean, hey, if you are, cool. But what I know about the people who are working on the technology and how far you are, since it's all open source, I'm like, you guys are not finishing this in a year. Maybe you'll finish it in like 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years went by, still hadn't happened. Today, Dash Evolution's still not out, and they're still working on it. So when I heard that about Pulse Chain, I was like, damn, there's no way they're going to do it in 3 months. There's no way they're going to do it in 6. There's no way they're going to do it that much. Maybe it'll take a year, maybe it'll take 2. I did sit down and come up with like a date, which I do very often with things out of my curiosity. And inevitably, my date was mid-January of this year, 2023. And I was wrong, but that's what I came up with. And, I'm not a Robert was right person. Let's all hashtag Robert was right. No, I was wrong. And what was that, like a year and a half after? Like, how long has it been now? Since
It's 1 year Pulse sacrifice, a little bit over. I think we're to be a year. Yeah, well, it'll be 2 years in July, so we're about a year and a half. But you were close on. If I was thinking about this, I go, right around when he said it was going to launch, things started to more speculation started to come around about V3, and I was like, well, maybe something's around the corner. Close enough.
Yeah, me too. I was like, ooh, but then when it started getting a little whatever, but yeah, I was thinking, I was like, okay, damn. I was like, all right, well, if I got this, Jesus, that's good. I mean, it was about a year before, I think it was December 15th or 17th. Um, I didn't know this was going to be the exact day, but I just used things like, math and like charts and the lunar cycle and other stuff to things that I learned about that financially working for different corporations to predict when Bitcoin was going to break its all-time high, right? Um, what was that, like? Maybe it was December 15th, 2021. Please don't quote me on that because I'm just kind of like, when the hell was that? But I remember it was like mid-December. And I had an email list where I would email like about 24 different people that I was really close with that really wanted to know what I had to say and wanted to hear what I had to say. Without without me attracting people that want to be like, cool, you gave me an expectation, let's sue you. And in that email, I said, hey, this is when Bitcoin's going to break its all-time high. I feel very certain about this. Maybe I'm wrong by a week or two. And so that very morning, it was like 7 in the morning. I tweeted saying, cool, today's the day where Bitcoin is going to smash through its all-time high. And I'm thinking, like, I could really feel that it was going to happen. But I'm looking at the chart. I'm like, yeah, it's like, 3, 4, 5 grand away from that. Let's see. And, within 6 to 12 hours later, it smashed through its all-time high. And within 24 hours later, Bitcoin was at like 25,000, I think. So, I'm not running around going, Robert was right, Robert was right. I was just like, holy shit, cool. And I thought that was going to happen with Pulse Chain because of that hype. I was like, damn, like, all right, I guess I can call stuff, damn. But would Pulse Chain and the Genius copy going on to Pulse Chain, right? The big thing is everybody is expecting, even though there's no expectations, that Pulse Chain is going to be a complete copy of the Ethereum set, the whole data state of Ethereum, right? So they're all expecting to get copies of their tokens, copies of their NFTs. But you know what? There's a possibility that that doesn't happen for certain tokens and doesn't happen for certain NFTs. Probably happen for all, but it's a possibility. Why not? If they don't want to give people a copy of their Zen, why not? If they don't want to give people a copy of their Genius, why not? Right? And that's the reality that that Pulse Chain, and I know one of the Pulse Chain developers personally. Unlike many of these paid Hex girls and Pulse Chain girls who are like, "Hey, I know a dev and blood." No, that's all bullshit. That's a possibility for one. But it sounded like you want to say something.
Well, no, I was going to say, you're friends with one of the developers. Like you're close with them. Then did I hear
Correct.
that right?
Yeah, I accidentally like muted and unmuted. That actually wasn't a pause of mine. I was like, oh shit, I actually muted myself. Yes.
Go on. You got my full attention here. I want to hear what you have. So you know these guys. We
Yeah.
were there for a second.
Unfortunately, yeah, I don't have anything interesting, unfortunately, to say like, on something that's like recorded and goes everywhere. One, the information I give could dox this person, and they work very close with Richard. Um, but so I respect that, and people will talk with me. They've just seen from knowing me for X amount of time that, and so I don't have anything interesting to say, unfortunately. And if there was anything doom and gloomy, he would let me know. But also, if there was anything, if there was anything extremely exciting, he surely wouldn't let me know. And he would let the marketing do its thing. He would let the community do its thing. So nothing interesting there. Sorry. When it comes to
Almost.
when it,
It felt like something was coming.
I know, right?
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
we'll wait for anything when it comes to that. Anything.
I do greatly respect, people's, if somebody wants something private. I didn't always respect that like 10 years ago. I was like, whatever, the whole world should be transparent. Screw it. Let's do it the Bitcoin way, full transparency. And I was that way too. And then, suddenly when I was getting like, death threats left on my like door and stuff and all sorts of random people trying to sue me and that taking up a ton of my time. Um, I was like, okay, I can see why it's valuable to have a little less transparency. You can save yourself a lot of time from like time or whatever things that are going to happen. But yeah, two things I want to say here though. One, I was very excited about Pulse Chain. And sorry for the people who want to connect with me on Pulse Chain. I'm not excited about it anymore, especially the more time that goes by. The idea at first was great. New competitors were coming in at that time, and new competitors were coming in, and the community is relatively small. It's the Hex community is probably the smallest community to make the biggest impact on like price, right, and pumping. Um, but the more time that goes by, the less relevant Pulse Chain becomes. There's so many other competitors out there doing things great. There's a there's so many competitors who could do that same thing anyways with the copies of stuff. So Pulse Chain was a great idea that also did need to come out timely. I'm not saying it's not going to be a great thing. I'm just saying there are so many options out here right now, and that's why Genius didn't wait for Pulse Chain. It went forward and picked what we believed were the 4 top blockchains. So worst case scenario is that Pulse Chain decides, you know what, I don't like Jack Levin. I don't like what this guy has to say about Richard. And then Zen's not on Pulse Chain. Well, so what? On the other hand, they can do something about that. On the other hand, the Genius developers and myself, we're all very in tune with that, and we all have a backup plan. If Pulse Chain doesn't include Genius, we have a backup plan where people will be able to. I mean, ultimately, we're going to have to use some admin to do this, or we may not. We may be able to use. We may be able to use Merkle root, Merkle tree, Merkle leaf. We may be able to use all that technology to do it in a different way. But Genius will be, as long as like I have any little bit of influence, right, with people in the Genius world who have covered launching, etc. As long as I still have a decent amount of influence there, Genius will definitely be on Pulse Chain. I think it should be.
I definitely think you have a greater chance than Jack. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Richard Hart and I, we have like pages and pages. I don't even know how many. One day I was like just curious about it because someone had asked me and I didn't know. And I was sitting there scrolling back on our conversations on, this platform and that platform. And I was just like, Jesus, I can't even get to the beginning of it. So Richard and I have talked at length, greatly, a little more than 2 years ago, and we may have also talked in the early mining days too on forums and such. But we've talked a lot at great at length, and I know he respects me, and I respect him. And um, but at the same time, I don't know how when it comes to what the masses want, you want to give them that. But then again, when you've got a chain, when you're in the blockchain world, it is so incredibly important to stand up and be an example of what you're promoting. So if you're promoting anti-censorship, the worst thing I think Pulse Chain can do is censor many contracts from coming in. They're going to lose those users. They're going to be doing a disservice for people who are expecting Pulse Chain to be valuable, right? So it would be actually a very unintelligent move. Um, it, yeah, it'd be terrible. So the best thing they can do is go by those morals, go by those expectations they set up, and also go by, even though, about a year and a half ago, Richard Hart talked about maybe we just won't have the scam ones in there. Um, it's very important they do that. It's very important that they, in a world where there's so many more competitors and their group is relatively small and getting smaller, and or their group is moving on to other things, it's going to be incredibly important. So I think Genius and Zen and all that will be on Pulse Chain, will be copied over, and people won't have to worry, because after all, it's definitely the best thing they could do for the ecosystem of Pulse Chain.
It definitely would be the smartest thing. Like you said, you don't want to lose the users, and at the end of the day, those people are expecting it, so it wouldn't be wise for them to do that
Yeah,
at
it's
all.
hard to
Yeah,
it's hard to tell people not to have expectations.
yeah. Well,
I,
hey
I
man,
don't know.
I appreciate your insight on Pulse Chain. It's interesting, the ties that you have to the developers, and even speaking with Richard himself. We're all waiting, so when that moment comes, I think everything will be, as far as the emotional roller coaster we've all been going through when it comes to the waiting period for Pulse Chain. It'll just be water under a bridge, and we'll all experience that. And I look forward to experience Genius on Pulse Chain as well. So hopefully that does happen, and they don't do anything silly like that, like not include that smart contract. And it'll be a nice new place to experience DeFi. But I
Hmm.
really, really appreciate you hopping on here. It's been about a couple hours. I got to run. I'm sure you got things to get to, and everybody else
Hmm.
is. This is recorded, so feel free to post it everywhere. Post it in your community. I'm going to get it out there so that people um, just could hear the good information that you've provided today. Because the opportunity with Genius, and I've said it before, I think that there's an opportunity of a lifetime here, and I think there's an opportunity for people to experience it, jump in and experience something so they can share that experience. And I think that is going to be a key part to, I guess, what you call some kind of marketing. Word of mouth is the best way. It's almost it's almost more powerful than it is more powerful, I think, than referral links and just having influencers going out there and shilling stuff. Just
and
being able
and
to.
even seeing the price go up and up and up is also incredible marketing. You know.
Oh yeah, and that the swing traders out there, once they hear about the opportunity you've given and everything else, the pumpamentals, and more education goes out there, it's going to definitely be something that is going to grow. 2023, 2024, it's got a bright future. So
Hmm.
thanks for being my popping my Twitter space cherry today.
Oh, no problem. Oh, cool. I didn't realize this is your first. Nice.
Yeah, and many to come, and I'd like to invite you back, in the near future, and we can, talk about how things are different, and pick your brains some more. Because I definitely think that you are a true innovator in the space, and I think what you've brought to the table, a lot of people are going to try and ultimately build around Genius, just like there's projects out there building around Hex, and I think it's only going to become a much larger community. So we're all early here that are in this Twitter space today, and everybody that's in Genius. I mean, it's only 30 days old, so this is when the opportunity is
Well,
at
check
its
check your
best.
stakes again. Check your stakes again, or your miners, because it's almost 50 days. Time's going fast.
Yeah, man, I'm loving the passive income. I was really excited when I was like, oh man, I passed already a million in Genius rewards, and now I'm like, I can't wait till I get to 2 million, and you know, I'm just gonna keep
Nice.
adding and you know, keep talking about it, educating people, and telling them about my experience. And
Dude, that's great. I mean, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that compliment, true innovator in space. Thank you. And yeah, I see it as something people will build around. I mean, what you saw, like Hedron, Icosa, all these things come up and build around. But uh, besides the NFT people, a whole lot of people don't know about, like, I mean, it's there, but I guess it's the least interesting for us DeFi people. A lot of times, DeFi people aren't interested in NFTs. Genius's launch and Genius's whole plan and white paper, have NFTs as a part of it. But what you'll find if you look closely is you see how people like build around and extend things. Well, the Genius edition of NFTs is a way for the community, and based on like voting and other stuff. Genius NFTs is a way for the community um, to improve and extend Genius without affecting any of its core amazing things. I mean, people will realize that more over time, but um, for people who are listening, if you're a person who wants to see the white paper, go to jenny.to/smart contract. That brings you the latest edition of the white paper. But most people, they want to hear it in plain language, and you should check it out too. It's a video series by Mike Vulcan, called Simply Genius, and type in the URL geni.to/simply genius, and it'll bring you to the video series. It's a bunch of short videos. As you would probably guess, the stability pool one's the longest. um, but it's a bunch of short videos about Genius, and it is so good. Like, I watched it twice, just being like, damn, I can't believe how well this guy like simplified things. So anybody interested in this, check out the simplified one. It's great.
you're gonna have to link me up with that those links. Good job,
I'm
good
sorry,
job.
I thought your response was the
Oh no, I came in. My daughter's excited. She's like, I went poop in the toilet. I'm like, good job. But hook me up with the links to that because I'm gonna definitely put it out there on Twitter. I think it's important that people see that. So I want to watch
Will
that
do.
myself too.
Will do. I'll respond to the tweet on this spaces with that. Or if anyone here from the Genius community is aware of that, please do. Yeah. And thank you again.
Yeah, man. And thank everybody for joining. Um, appreciate you guys, the time you spent, and hope everybody has a great rest of their Sunday night. You all take care. You take care, Robert, and
You too.
let's not be strangers. We'll touch base, and I'd love to talk a little bit more as well.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, dog. Thank you.
Yeah, dog. All right,
Have a
guys.
good one.
Have a good night.
See ya.
Bye.